In today's video, we'll be recapping the 2021 movie titled Nobody. The movie begins with a man who's been beaten up sitting in a dark room. After lighting a cigarette, he opens a can of tuna and feeds it to a cat that emerges out of his coat. We see a man and a woman who appear to be police inspectors or detectives interrogating him. The scene shifts, and we see the man sitting at a bus stop. We find out that the man is Hutch Mansell, and to everyone, he looks like an ordinary guy with a boring life. He appears to be your average family man who has 2 kids with his wife Becca. Working at his father-in-law's metal fabrication company, Hutch is starting to get worn down by his mundane life, and it's so bad that his son Blake doesn't even regard him. He doesn't have much luck with his wife either, as she now places a pillow between them while they sleep at night. Hutch wakes up when he hears a dog in the neighborhood barking. He gets out of bed and decides to check it out. Sneaking down the stairs, he hears the noises of intruders breaking into the house. He quietly grabs a golf club, ready to defend himself. When he tries to make a phone call, the female intruder of the two spots him and points a gun at him, and he immediately notices a tattoo on her wrist. The male intruder demands his watch, so he gives it to him. As they're about to take his wedding ring, Blake runs downstairs and tackles the man. As the two struggle on the floor, Hutch gets afraid that his son might get hurt, so he tells Blake to let go. Blake releases the guy, but he punches him in the face before escaping. After the intruders leave, Blake is furious with his father for letting them go, especially because he now has a black eye. This makes Blake think less of his father than he already did. Soon, the police arrive at the house, and Hutch regrets letting the intruders go without doing anything to stop them. He feels weak and churns at the thought that he couldn't protect his family. As you'd expect, Becca is very disappointed in him and goes back to bed after the police leave. Ashamed of himself, Hutch stays on the couch downstairs in the living room. The only person who bothers to check up on him is his younger daughter, Sammy. She climbs on his belly to lie with him and talks about how they need a cat in the house. The next morning, Blake asks Hutch to help him with his assignment where he has to interview veteran soldiers. Hutch tells his son that he's just an auditor, and Becca chimes in, telling Blake to ask his uncle because he was a real soldier. However, Hutch retorts with a snide remark, suggesting that his brother didn't see any action in the army. After breakfast, Becca and the kids set out, and Sammy hugs Hutch before leaving. Outside, the neighbor talks about how he would have beaten the intruders if it was his house they attacked. He also brags about his new car, revealing that it was all he inherited from his father. Afterward, Hutch goes to the bus stop and prepares himself for another miserable week. At work, his annoying brother-in-law named Charlie taunts him for not fighting off the intruders. He gives Hutch his gun so he can defend himself in the future, but Hutch rejects it. However, Charlie insists, forcing the gun into his hand and telling him that he should use it to keep his sister, Becca, safe. Hutch takes the gun and hides it in the carton before placing it inside the fridge. Afterward, Eddie talks with Hutch about selling the company to him. He tells Hutch that he would appreciate a fair offer since he built the business for many years, but Hutch just replies that he wants something of his own. Later, Hutch returns to his office and locks himself inside. Suddenly, he opens what appears to be a secret compartment on the shelf and turns on a radio. He begins to communicate with a man named Harry, his brother who everyone believes is dead. Hutch tells Harry that he held back the previous night against some intruders. He reveals that he couldn't get himself to hurt them because they were young and scared. He also noticed that their gun wasn't loaded, so he let them off the hook, knowing they were harmless. Afterward, Hutch goes to visit his father, David. He tells the old man about it, and David just asks Hutch if he remembers who he used to be. When Hutch returns home, Blake still isn't talking to him. Sammy, who is in a bad mood, approaches him and tells him that her bracelet is missing. It seems that the bracelet was in the same bowl that the intruders stole from. Instantly, Hutch's demeanor changes and he quickly leaves the house. He returns to his father's place where he borrows his FBI badge and gun. Later, he goes into town and visits the tattoo shops. He shows them the FBI badge, but the store owner just laughs, pointing out that the badge expired 20 years ago. He then asks Hutch who he is. Hutch says that he's a man that's looking for someone and then makes the tattoo on his wrist visible. The moment they see the tattoo, they're suddenly willing to help him. He shows them the picture of the tattoo the intruders had, and the tattoo artists give him the address of the person who got the tattoo. When he gets to the location, he finds the intruders and threatens them with a gun, demanding his watch and the bracelet back. However, he soon realizes that they have a sick baby in the house, so he leaves them in defeat. Hutch gets on a bus, but it's soon stopped by 5 Russian thugs who also get on. They begin to intimidate the passengers and then surround a young woman like predators. Seeing this, Hutch tells the driver to step out. He locks the bus doors and then threatens the thugs. They laugh at him, but he just takes out all of his anger and frustration on them. Despite being seriously injured, he still managed to help the lady get off the bus before resuming his bloody battle with the thugs. After defeating all 5 of them, Hutch apologizes to the bus driver for the mess and then returns home very late. At home, he sees Becca at the table waiting for him. She asks where he was and he tells her he went out like old times. She immediately understands and helps treat his wounds. Hutch then tells her that he misses her and wants their marriage to be as blissful as it once was. Later that night, his words seem to have worked because Becca finally removes the pillow separating them on the bed and begins caressing his body. The scene shifts to a Russian man named Yulian, who happens to be a mob enforcer. He goes into a club and performs a song, then walks up to a group of men to ask if they're satisfied with the security he provided for the club. One of the men points out that his casual singing and dancing don't make them feel he's capable of securing them, so he kills one of the men to show just how capable he is. Suddenly, Yulian receives a phone call and is informed that his brother has been hospitalized due to brain damage. It turns out Yulian's little brother was one of the thugs that Hutch messed up earlier. As Yulian furiously demands the identity of the man responsible, one of the thugs shows him a Metro card that he picked up after the fight. Meanwhile, at home, Hutch is finally gaining his confidence back and getting things in his life under control. Harry suddenly calls him and tells him to contact a man called the Barber to find out more about Yulian, whose brother he maimed. The Barber tells Hutch that he doesn't know much about Yulian, but assures him that he'll seek revenge for his brother. Meanwhile, Yulian receives information about Hutch's father, including his location. Yulian's secretary blackmails a man working at the Pentagon into digging up information on Hutch. All he finds are files where Hutch is referred to as nobody, but he sends all the information to the secretary regardless. At night, Yulian sends an elite team to assassinate Hutch and his family. Hutch sees the intruders outside, so he sends his family to the basement to hide before coming out to take out the intruders one by one in the dark. Yulian's right-hand man, Pavel, eventually takes him out with a taser before carrying him in the trunk of their car. However, thanks to his experience, Hutch frees himself from the handcuffs by dislocating his wrist. He uses a fire extinguisher to create a thick cloud that causes them to have an accident. The car tumbles, but Hutch comes out unharmed while the others are killed. He then returns home to free Becca and the children from the basement. She drives the kids to a safe place while Hutch stays behind to finish the fight. After Becca drives away, Hutch sits the corpses on his living room couch and begins to chat with them. He reveals that he was an auditor, an assassin hired to kill people who seemed invincible. That was his life until one day he had mercy on a target and let him go. A year later, he discovered that the man had turned a new leaf and had a nice family. Seeing what the second chance gave the former criminal, Hutch decided to retire. He suddenly finds Sammy's bracelet under the table, and after retrieving it, he sets the house on fire with the corpses inside. Hutch then steals his obnoxious neighbor's new car and zooms off. Meanwhile, at his father's nursing home, Yulian's assassin sneaks into David's room. However, David was just pretending to be asleep and kills them both with his shotgun. Later, Hutch buys the business from Eddie with bars of gold and closes the company temporarily so he can use the factory to create traps. Elsewhere, Yulian finds out that Pavel is dead, which makes him even more furious and hungry for revenge. Later, Hutch tells Harry he has a plan. He goes to Yulian's place and burns all of his money. He then threatens him with a bomb and tells Yulian to either take the little money left or come after him for revenge. Sure enough, Yulian picks the latter, and after Hutch leaves with his bomb, Yulian dispatches his most deadly assassins to kill Hutch. However, it's a trap, because when they follow him to the factory, they are bombarded with gunshot attacks and booby traps in an ambush set up by Hutch, David, and Harry. Yulian manages to shoot Harry, so Hutch retaliates and kills Yulian with a bomb. David and Harry escape before the police arrive, while Hutch stays back to record a loving message for his wife and kids. He's arrested and interrogated by the police, which we saw in the first scene, but he's quickly released with no charges. The story ends 3 months later when Hutch is buying a new house, and when he receives a call requiring his services, he and his wife ask the agent if the house has a basement. That's all for today's video. Hope you enjoyed it. To see more videos like this, be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching and see you next time.